Hello and welcome to the podcast that is less Ashley Young and more Ashley Barnes. It's the big man up top.
It's the big man up top, Ed.
Yes, Joe.
How is your international break going?
Oh, it's been fantastic.
You having a good time?
Yeah, hardly watched any football.
Yeah, it's been a nice break, really, hasn't
Thought
it?
about mowing the lawn, didn't mow the lawn.
We're kind of on first mow of the year territory, aren't we?
No, first mow was
Have you already done it?
2 weeks ago for me.
What are we going to talk about today?
We are going to touch on England and some of the other international games, and then also we're going to have a discussion later on. We're going to be talking about brain injuries.
Yes, this is something we wanted to talk about for a while, and now feels quite a good time to do it.
It does.
Following a couple of incidents throughout the last couple of weeks. But before we get onto all of that, it's quiz time.
It is. It's time for Bible Ballers. It's my turn to quiz you this week, Joe.
Yes, I'm reeling after last week's victory. Double points.
It was excellent. We're going to have to go back and count the points at some point because I can't remember. You're comfortably in the lead. That's all we know.
I think so.
And then we should just call that game one.
Game one.
And you've won game
Feels
one.
Slightly underwhelming. Season one.
Yeah, maybe. Sure. This week I'm quizzing you. And how are you feeling? Are you coming into with that confidence?
I'm feeling confident, Ed. I feel like you've got a few tricks up your sleeve. So yeah, I'm ready.
I think this is a good one for you. So here we go. Which one club man was once described as a bottler by TalkSport's Adrian Durham during a live phone-in, prompting him to pick up the phone, call the show, and defend himself live on air?
It's a good question.
Any thoughts initially?
Well, I can't say I'm a seasoned TalkSport listener.
No.
I can't deal with all the adverts, Ed. It's every 20 minutes.
This was sort of one of those famous moments in football broadcasting history, but obviously you're a little younger than me.
I am. One club man immediately comes to mind is Mark Noble, which would fit with the whole Bible thing. So that's my only thought at the moment, Mark Noble.
Well, why don't you have a think about it, Joe?
I'll have a think, yeah. Well, Ed, we are recording this on a Monday.
Yes.
So we are one England game in.
One England game in, exactly. By the time this podcast comes out, we will have played Latvia, but as it stands, we haven't.
We haven't. We are one game into Thomas Tuchel's 18-month reign.
We have 90 minutes under our belts.
But the thing is, as England fans, you read everything you can into 19 minutes against Albania.
We don't give him time to settle in. No, this is it.
Absolutely not. We measure whether we can win the World Cup on this one game or not.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Ed, what do you think?
Well, I would say generally the consensus has been underwhelming. I think that feels fair. Obviously, all the talk around the team and who he picked, there was an element of, is he just going for some of those old lads that we thought we'd got rid of? And so I think the mood was generally accepting. Well, let's see how we play. And to be honest, it felt a little bit like England of old, really. Albania came out with a low block, which is the modern term for just parking the bus.
Back,
yeah. And to be fair, they did very well. They were very compact and made sure that England couldn't create any chances. It was very tight and compact, and we just struggled to get through it. And it was that classic thing of, I feel like for the last 30 years, whenever you go to half-time in these World Cup qualifiers against some Eastern European country, you just hear them go, I just want to see England move the ball a bit quicker. And that's exactly what we were up to.
Yeah.
Definitely a few bright moments. I would say, well, for starters, we won. And World Cup qualifiers, that hasn't always been a given in England's past. Sometimes you can have the banana skin of these games, and actually just getting 3 points on the board is a really great first step. I thought Miles Lewis-Skelly looked really, really good. He was very composed on the ball. Just looked every inch a player at this level. Obviously scored his goal, which is one of the few times we managed to unlock this Albanian defence.
I think that's the thing with these games is that Thomas Tuchel's in charge for the next 18 months, and he's going to play much more teams that play the low block than he is teams that aren't going to play the low block, which is the interesting thing about international football, is that actually the stern tests are traditionally going to be later on in a major tournament.
When you're playing against these bigger teams that don't just sit back against them.
And you don't really get that opportunity to test yourself against them.
Are we like Spurs? Is that what we are? Are we the Spurs of international football?
Maybe we are. Yeah, I'm not sure I like
very
that.
Upsetting.
Now, what do you think about this midfield conundrum? I feel like this has been the main talking point over the last 2 years of England's support, is who is that third midfielder? You know, Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham, you have to say, are the two nailed-on starters.
Yeah.
This game he's gone with Curtis Jones. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, I thought he was really good, actually. When he got the ball, he was looking to move the ball quickly, and that is what you need to do. As much as we were laughing about the move it quicker thing, you've got to get on the ball, and you've either got to drive forward yourself, or you've got to play the pass quickly. And he did that. I thought he had a good game. I thought the midfield looked good. I thought Bellingham and Rice looked good, except that at times it was a bit static. Bellingham there were moments where he just wandered about a little bit, but then he created that first goal, and he's the kind of player that sort of really one of the only players on the team that could pick a pass like that. So, yeah, I thought the midfield looked okay, but Jones, for me, is right up there for being worthy of another start, I think.
You almost want that third midfield to add that balance to the team. You've got Jude Bellingham's real box-to-box. For Declan Rice, he plays a bit further forward for England, and that third midfielder, you need to be that
utility player.
Exactly, yeah. And that's something Curtis Jones does really well. He keeps hold of the ball well. He can pick a pass. He does get some criticism for not releasing the ball quick enough, but I think you're starting to see that he can impact games a bit more, which is what we need, particularly against these low blocks. Dan Burn got a start as well.
He did. He hit the bar.
Yeah. What a week that would have been.
Oh, goodness. If he'd have scored, then the headlines would have been written about him.
Yeah.
Looking at how England set up defensively, I thought we looked pretty solid. Particularly that centre-back pairing of Gahey and Konza looks really nailed on to me to be England's starting centre-back pair. And then Harry Kane got his goal at the end, didn't he?
Yes, as he seems to always do. How do you think he played?
Well, I think it was very typical Harry Kane, really, in that he sort of looked fairly good on the ball, equally looked like he was having some mobility issues, as he has done in the last few years, a little bit slower. And when you really want that dynamic striker running to the near post, he just isn't that kind of player anymore. So I'd say, again, underwhelming, but then scored his goal, so you can't really argue with it.
That's the thing. I think you watch Kane so often, and he drops a lot deeper for England, and I think since you've had a player like Jude Bellingham playing a bit further forward, he's not been able to do that as much and have an impact on the game. But you can't take him off because he can score goals.
And it's just that thing of, do you want a really exciting, dynamic player, or do you want somebody who actually scores goals? And you know what? Give me the latter every time, I think.
And realistically, who do you think would challenge him for that starting spot?
My gut feeling was, I think Liam Delap would really suit it. Maybe not in the conversation at the moment. There's other players, Ollie Watkins missed out on the squad. Yeah. He's a similar sort of player, but during the course of this qualifying campaign, I'd love to see Delap get a call up at some point.
I think he is kind of touted as being the long-term replacement. He's a very similar kind of player to when Harry Kane was that age. And yeah, I think he brings something different. I think I'd like to see him have a chance too.
Yeah, definitely.
Shall we move on?
Let's move on.
From England to Wales.
Yes, 3-1 against Kazakhstan. I referred to England as underwhelming earlier. Well, the BBC described this as an unconvincing win. Maybe in a similar boat to England. Not a great performance, but just getting the win.
Just get the first win on the board. England probably more nailed on to qualify than Wales, but Wales are playing well under Craig Bellamy, and you will fancy their chances to qualify for the World Cup. They are, of course, in a group with Belgium, because they are always in a group with Belgium. They seem to play each other 3 times a year.
Very much so. But I think the thing that will bother Craig Bellamy is that Kazakhstan are 110th in the FIFA rankings. So, yes, 3-1. Okay, fine. It wasn't the most convincing win. You'll take it, but only if you can see performances get better. Goals from Dan James, Ben Davis, and, of course, former Stoke loanee Rabbi Matondo. For the likes of Dan James, it's really great that he gets a goal. You need players like that scoring goals. They're the kind of players that will actually propel you to not just getting decent results, but actually having good performances in this as well.
Yeah, and Wales they've obviously had to move on from the Gareth Bale days. You've had that star player for so long that can step up. You've got these kind of forwards that are slightly less reliable, exciting players, confidence players that on their day can really make a difference. Brennan Johnson, Dan James, Harry Wilson, all these forward players that You fancy will change the game, but it's all about confidence for Wales, I think. Let's move on to the main event, Ed. The Nations League.
Was it?
Well, Scotland have very sadly been relegated to Nations League B. We all feared this could happen.
Can you imagine such a humiliation, Joe, of being relegated to Nations League B?
Could never be my team.
No, exactly. But no, in all seriousness, they'll be very disappointed from this. They were 1-0 up from the first leg of the playoff against Greece. Won 1-0 away, did the hard job.
That's what you got to do.
And then losing in a very miserable fashion at Hampden Park, 3-0 to Greece. Did you catch any of this?
I didn't catch any of this one. I've read around that John McGinn described this as quite an embarrassing defeat. And you have to say, with that 1-0 lead, a 3-0 home defeat is very disappointing.
If you check out the highlights, there was a great goal for Greece, the second goal on the night. 17-year-old Konstantinos Karetsis.
Well done.
Remember the name.
I saw that. I was like, I think I'd actually struggle to remember that name.
But yeah, he scored a great goal to put Greece 2-0 up. Greece actually played really well and they looked really dynamic, and a much improved performance from them compared to the first game in the first leg.
As well as the Nation League playoff games, which these were, we also saw this weekend the Nations League quarter-finals.
And am I right in saying that these were behind a paywall, Jeff?
They were. Now, are you telling me that you didn't pay £2.49 to watch any of these games?
I did not, Joe, no. And here's the thing. Maybe I should have done, because these results are massive, aren't they? Did you see them?
There were some great games. Now, France against Croatia, you could actually watch on the YouTube.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which I watched the penalty shootout of this game. And it seemed to me that they really cared about this game.
Yeah, the Nations League continues to surprise when actually you think, oh, the people don't care, teams don't care. I actually think that they generally don't. It's just you care when you're up against a big team.
Yeah.
And so that's the design of the competition, isn't it? The second you're actually not playing, Estonia, no offence to Estonia, but you're playing a Germany or an Italy, you ramp up, don't you? You ramp up your performance, and that's what we got. That's what we got over the weekend.
Some cracking games. France went through to the semi-finals by beating Croatia 5-4 on penalties after a 2-2 draw.
Germany and Italy finished 3-3, Joe. Germany getting through 5-4 on aggregate. I don't know if you saw the second goal in this one, Joe. Kimmich taking a quick corner for Musiala to score, whilst Donnarumma was remonstrating with the referee. It was big Trent Origi Barcelona vibes.
Got a poster of that goal.
Oh, I bet you have.
It's in the utility, so you can't see it. Let's move on very swiftly. Portugal 5, Denmark 2.
I know, insane. Again, from a 1-0 aggregate lead that Denmark had in the first game, all of a sudden 5-2. What's going on here?
It's goals galore. Now, do you think teams are just not bothered about defending? This is a tournament that no one really knows how good it is, how important it is, what it means. So they're just like, let's just attack.
Just go for it.
Let's have a good time.
Go for it.
And we're very grateful for that. So yes, Cristiano Ronaldo had quite the game. He missed a penalty in the 5th minute of this one, but then made up for it in the 72nd minute by scoring a goal to put them 2-1 ahead on the night. And then they went on to win 5-2 in extra time.
I still can't believe he is still at the forefront of Portugal's team. And they've got loads of really great players, but still, he's the one taking the penalties.
He's the main man.
The main man.
And I think
he
will be
must be 50 soon, He
must. And he's clearly got his eyes on playing at the next World Cup. You'd imagine that's his last one.
Yeah.
But we say this every time.
Every time. And he's determined to make it. But the pick of the bunch, though, was Spain 3, Netherlands 3. I say pick of the bunch, apparently, because as we mentioned earlier,
£2.49.
We didn't see it. But on a night of just pure chaos, this one finished 5-5 on aggregate, with Spain winning 5-4 on penalties, Joe.
And a great goal in this game by Lamine Yamal. I think he's starting to get a bit of a trademark finish. He's only 17 years old, which we are contractually obliged to say every time we talk about Lamine Yamal, how young he is.
Really great finish.
Really well done to him.
Closest to home, games, of course, still happened in League One and League Two and the rest of the pyramid, and we shouldn't forget them, Joe.
No, we certainly don't.
No. So League One, the big one here was Wrexham with a big win against fellow promotion chasers Stockport. Jay Rodriguez, remember him?
I do, yes.
Getting the only goal in a 1-0 win. Birmingham was still with a very comfortable lead at the top of League One, although this has been reduced to 9 points, but they do still have 2 games in hand over Wrexham. So it's looking comfortable for Birmingham there. And in League Two, no win in 6 now for league leaders Walsall. The gap has completely eroded to just 1 point ahead of Bradford. But also, even if you look behind Bradford, there are a few teams, Port Vale, Doncaster, who are maybe 6 or 7 points behind, but have games in hand again. The gap is narrowing at the top of League Two. It's all getting very interesting. So Walsall are really looking over their shoulder and need a win there.
Very exciting, and we're starting to get to crunch time in the Football League, and playoff season is nearly upon us.
How exciting.
Very exciting. So Ed, as we said before, we've been wanting to have a conversation for a while about head injuries in particular. And this is because there's been a couple of incidents over the last couple of weeks that have highlighted this. Jean-Philippe Mateta had a bit of a close call when he played Millwall in the last round of the FA Cup. He went for a challenge with the goalkeeper, got a boot to the head. Luckily, he's okay. He got an injury to his ear, but could have been a lot worse. Similarly, this weekend, Brazilian goalkeeper Alisson was involved in a horrific clash of heads, apparently concussed, but is also fine following that weekend. But we thought that this has been a conversation in football for a while.
Yeah.
That head injuries, obviously, if a player goes down with a head injury, the game has to be stopped. And it's a very serious thing that can lead to very serious consequences.
Yeah, that's right. And so to kick off our discussion about this, UCB News reporter James Morris recently interviewed Olympic gold medalist rower James Cracknell. Do you remember him?
Yes.
From the, I think, 2000 Olympics. I think he won gold there. Now, he suffered a horrific brain injury while cycling across the US in 2010. He shares his journey of what happened to him and how he had to recover. And I think it just does an incredible job of highlighting how truly awful living with a brain injury can be. And I think that's just a really good place for us to start. So let's have a listen to this interview with James Cracknell.
Let's do it.
I was, previous life an Olympic athlete, and so I got medals at the 2000, 2004 Olympics and a number of world championships between. And after stopping sport, I did some endurance challenges. I rowed across the Atlantic in a 2-man boat. I was actually doing a travel across America with the Discovery Channel, and I was cycling up Route 66, and I got hit by a fuel truck. Its wing mirror hit the back of my head. I got helicoptered to hospital and was in a coma for 10 days, and then in hospital for sort of 6 weeks there and a month back here. I got hit on the back of the head, and the front of my brain hit the front of my skull, which is the frontal lobes control a lot of cognitive function, and that's what got really mashed up.
I think I'm right in saying, James, that the reason you survived, you put a lot of that down to the fact that you were wearing a cycle helmet at the time. Is that right?
There's no doubt. If I hadn't been wearing a cycle helmet, I'd have been dead. And a lot of it was luck. I got thrown away from the truck rather than underneath it. What helped initially was that I didn't have any other traumatic injuries. I didn't have collapsed lungs. I didn't have broken limbs. They were just focusing on my head, which was incredibly useful that they didn't have to sort of divide and conquer with the medical staff there.
Could you just talk us through the journey that started of recovery 15 years ago or so? Could you just give us a bit of an insight into the process that went on?
The brain controls everything that we do, from functions that support life through to functions that are very minor but affect behaviour and affect how you interact with the world and people around you. So it does control everything, and it's really difficult a lot of it's subjective. It's not the same as a broken leg where they'll show you an x-ray and then a few weeks later this heals, and then there may be no scar on the bone 10 years down the line. The brain recovers in different ways. It's how much you're resting, how much you're drinking or smoking or whatever. There's so many things that you can do to influence it. And it's almost like your behavior is being argued that you become more of you. So if you've been stubborn and selfish, you become more stubborn and selfish. It says all manner of things that do affect it. It wasn't actually until recently I was doing some work with Courthurst, a brain injury specialist, and they said actually go and have these latest scans. And I had it didn't exist 15 years ago, a sort of MEG scan which measures the electricity and the activity in your brain. And they were going through it and with me, then the professor, and he was saying actually, and so for 15 years on, it was still areas in there that were still damaged. He's saying there's electrical noise in this area. Now, this is what will affect your facial recognition. Max was 2010 and the Olympics in 2012. So I was meeting a number of sponsors during that time, and I got introduced myself, and they go, "We met last week." So then I had to get pictures of people. I'd work out if I met them or not. But that was just me knowing I was struggling. Someone said, "Okay, actually, like, this will be a problem. Is the problem for you?" Would then help, and everything else will then help actually your behaviour and how you interact with people and stresses that you needn't have. Behavioural change is a big part of any accident, but especially a brain injury. And when I left hospital, the neurologist goes, 80% of people with a brain injury get divorced. But the reality is it may be the behavioural changes that could be explained and I could have been warned for if I'd had an MEG scan at that time, because actually, you will not do well if there's a change in routine. Whereas, if you've got 3 kids, your routine is going to change. So that means it would have been a reason why I react more like a teenager to routine change than an adult. And so all those things help in life, in work, in relationships and everything. And I think that's a big part of 1.5 million people go to hospital with a head injury, and how many then got for a follow-up and to check actually, is there any long-term damage? Over 50% of our prison inmates have had a brain injury of some kind that subtly changes their behaviour, which then may lead them down the wrong path, which will get them arrested, charged, etc. So it does control everything that we do.
For those in sports, perhaps young people, I know Oxford Uni is doing a study over the next couple of years or so into the kind of technology that you've been able to benefit from. What's your take on looking at predicting recovery time for people in sports, especially young people, and just helping them on their journeys, James?
Whether it's a head injury or any injury, is that people who do sport want to get back to doing sport as quick as possible. And rugby has changed massively in terms of the way they're dealing with it, both in matches and in training. And the culture is changing between telling a little lie to get back on the pitch or to get back to training. Actually, you're a long time living with your head. So just get it checked out. There is no downside to getting it checked out. Other people care about you, and you're hurting them by not protecting yourself. And that's the way I would view a head injury, is that you may be blasé about it, but people who love you and care for you won't be. And so don't dismiss it.
I've read that you've called your recovery, bearing in mind that you've received an OBE, you've had all of these sporting achievements, you've called your recovery your greatest achievement. Could you just perhaps speak to those of us who may be going through a variety of different challenges? Perhaps we've experienced something like your journey. Could you just share a little insight there about recovery, please, James?
Yeah, I think the hardest and the most difficult thing that I've dealt with was people's perceptions of what I would be able to do. And people really close to me, whether it be friends, partner, work colleagues, saying, you won't be able to do that again. And the one thing that I found really gets knocked is your confidence. So if your confidence is lower and people are constantly telling you, you can't do that, it's very easy. And I found myself really close to accepting, okay, I won't be able to do that again. And maybe it's a part of what did make me good at sport, whatever it was, saying, actually, no, I'm going to be in control of it. And that's when you start to be able to steer your own boat to where you want to go. But I think it's really difficult when everyone else is saying it can't be done. They've made up their mind about you without even having met you. It's difficult. It doesn't happen overnight, but if you keep cracking on at it and don't let it get you down. And actually, one of the things I just took a while to get, for me to see, I think having done sport, is that asking for help is a sign of strength or weakness. And so if you do want help, ask for it. You got to have confidence to do it, but it is the braver thing to do than to say, no, I don't need it. You may think I'm going to solve it myself, but the reality is it's talking about it to someone, often someone who doesn't know you, is really, really helpful.
Well, thank you for offering some of your words of wisdom today, James. That's James Cracknell, OBE. Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Great chat there with Olympic gold medalist rower James Cracknell and UCB News' James Morris. And obviously we said this is a rowing story, but there are similar stories that have happened in football, Ed. There's a couple that you want to talk us through. Yeah,
so I think the two examples that spring to mind for me are Jeff Astle and Ryan Mason. So Jeff Astle was a player who played in the 60s and 70s and was famously a bit of a West Brom legend. He was a striker. He was a classic big man up top and was particularly well noted for his heading ability. And essentially what happened, sadly, post-retirement was that all of that sort of minor trauma of heading the ball had an impact on his brain. And the cause of death was a degenerative brain disease, a disease that's often associated with boxers. And a verdict of death by industrial injury was recorded in his case, which is really sad. But essentially, it made it really clear that football was the reason that he died the way he did, which I think has got to be a big shock to all of us. And I know that there is a foundation in his name, and his daughter has done a lot of amazing campaigning work to try and get out the message of footballers heading the ball and what it can do. And I think when you look at that, also with a relatively recent story of Ryan Mason. Now, he had a very different situation. His was a traumatic single event brain injury that he suffered on the pitch against Chelsea whilst playing for Hull. But that ended his career. And the situation with him was that he's had to have plates in his skull, screws, all that sort of stuff, and still to this day suffers horrifically from what he went through. So very different sort of injuries there, a very different set of circumstances, but two lives irreparably changed by brain injuries. I just wanted to really quickly just sort of talk about a couple of different types of brain injury because I think it's important that we get these right.
Yeah.
The main one that people will know is concussion. Now, concussion, I think in the modern game feels like something that's, it's fine, everyone gets concussed. It's just a throwaway line of, a player's got concussion. But actually, it is a mild traumatic brain injury resulting from a blow to the head, which causes the brain to move rapidly inside the skull. And actually, sometimes loss of consciousness occurs, but not all the time. And yeah, it's important to remember that this is a form of traumatic brain injury. CTE, as I mentioned before, is essentially a progressive brain disease, which often comes about as a result of many concussions over years, and that can lead to memory loss, confusion, aggression, depression, and eventually dementia. Second impact syndrome is when somebody suffers from concussion and then has another concussion before the original symptoms have subsided, and that's really dangerous. It can lead to really rapid brain swelling. And that's why there's a whole thing about if you get concussed, you need to spend 2 weeks not doing any activity, any physical activity. It's to stop that second impact. There's other traumatic injuries that you can have, such as intracranial hemorrhaging, which is where you've had an injury to the head that's led to maybe something like bleeding within the skull, which requires urgent medical attention. That's more like what Ryan Mason had to deal with. And I think really the first thing that we need to say is injuries just happen in football, don't they,
Injuries do happen. Yeah, it's part of the game. It is a contact sport. But it feels like brain injuries, head injuries, are obviously that bit more serious, and we need to give particular attention to. Now, these governing bodies, UEFA, FA, do you feel like they're doing enough to protect players in this position?
I don't think they are. I think we've seen a lot in the last few years in terms of changes to the game. There's been changes in the rules around concussion and what that means. Recently, the introduction of concussion substitutes that actually involved Liverpool, didn't it?
Like you say, quite recently, they've implemented the concussion substitution. Now, what happens here is that if a player has a head injury, they're assessed by a club doctor to see if they have a concussion or not. If they do, the club is allowed an extra substitute. They have to fill in a form to say this is a concussion substitute. So they're allowed that sixth substitution. And this happened in a Liverpool game recently. Southampton player Jan Bednarek, just before half-time, was withdrawn due to the concussion protocols after an incident involving a clash of heads.
And it's right in saying that in that moment, Southampton were given an extra substitution, but also Liverpool were to even the playing field.
Yeah.
And that created its own confusion in and of itself, didn't it?
Yeah, so Mo Salah was going to be withdrawn as the sixth substitute. And he said to the bench, "Oh, you got this wrong. We've already had 5. Like, we can't do 6 subs." And the ref had to remind him that, "Oh no, you've got this concussion substitute."
So that speaks to me like that it's something that the players aren't massively aware of, or there's some confusion there, definitely.
I think absolutely. And I think the big thing for me in this story is that Jan Bednarek was assessed by a club doctor.
Yeah.
So that is a doctor that is part of the Southampton medical staff. So in some ways, if these players are being assessed by a club doctor, that club doctor has an ulterior motive maybe, or is having pressure from a manager to make sure that player is okay to carry on.
And I think that that's part of the main issue here with the current concussion protocols, is that we are still trusting players and we're trusting clubs and club doctors to make the correct decision on behalf of their player. Now, look, I'm not in any way trying to cast aspersions or anything like that. I think that the coaching staff will be aware, like if somebody is really struggling, okay, maybe they can't play. But at the same time, they're coming under pressure to win that game, to win the league, or whatever that may be. And they're going to be inclined to let a player go that is borderline. Let them go back out. If they say, "Boss, I can play," if the manager says, "Come on, let's get him back out on the pitch." You can imagine yourself, if you're a fan and you see Mo Salah going down injured, you're just thinking, "Oh, come on, let's go. Let's hope he's okay."
Absolutely.
But let's get him back on the pitch.
I think if you think in this scenario, it's quite clear that Southampton are going down. They've not been good enough this season. An away game at Anfield, your best centre-back goes off. You're like, we're probably not going to win anyway. Let's not risk it.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine that is at the end of the season, you're at home to a team down there, you're battling to stay up.
You need a point to stay up. Yeah, exactly. It's a very different ball game.
It's very and all of a sudden you've got this decision to make: player welfare or team performance.
And that's why I think that personally this decision should be taken entirely out of the hands of club doctors, club personnel. It should be an independent doctor who is there to assess the player, make a decision: has he been concussed, or is there a possibility of that? And to then tell the referee, "I'm withdrawing this player from the game," and nobody else can say anything about it. And that's just similar to a referee making a decision. Now, I know that will create all sorts of extra logistics and things, but I just think that if we're going to actually be serious about player welfare, and if we're actually going to be really serious about the health of these players, we need to actually put the things in place that actually does something.
Yeah.
Not just pay lip service to it, I think, really.
This is actually something that they do really well in the NFL. They have this concussion protocol, and all assessments are done by that independent doctor. Not only that, there's a whole bit of legislation in place that if that player is concussed, he cannot play again that day.
Yeah.
And then there's a time limit on when he can play again. And I think that's something that we need to be seriously looking at.
Well, that's what's so disappointing about seeing the Alisson stuff over the weekend, is that if you watch that video, there is no way that Alisson is A-OK after the horrific clash that he had. And look, he might be fine, but I would have thought that the bare minimum would be that he needs to have the time off for a concussion. But all of a sudden, he's coming out, no, don't worry, I'm fine. Liverpool are coming out. He's fine. He's going to play next weekend.
This was the thing for me. The first bit of news I saw about this is that Alisson is going to be okay to play for Liverpool next week. It wasn't Alisson is going to be okay.
Yeah.
It was, he is okay to play again.
And this is exactly it, is that for me, I watched that video and think there is no way he should be playing football next week, because it just looks so awful. Joe, what do you think the Bible can possibly speak to us about this? Because we're talking about, this is very football-y, very football chat. Yeah. One big theme of the Bible is we should be looking after each other, I think. But also, there's this amazing passage in James 2 that actually speaks to why we don't just need to say nice things, but we actually need to do stuff as well. So this passage says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it?" In this letter, it's saying, like, look, you can't just say stuff. It has to be followed with actions, and you can't just sort of wish somebody well and, oh yes, we care about your well-being, and then not follow that up with tangible physical actions in order to ensure that. And so this is it for me, is that obviously the governing bodies, the FA, the Premier League, all of that sort of stuff, they're going to be most concerned about getting all those players onto the pitch and playing the game so that, you know, the advertisers are happy. But actually, the truth be told is that the priority has to be the welfare of the players. And for me, it can't just be platitudes here. Like, we must care for these people as fellow humans, even if that means disappointing them by not letting them play sport because they're too injured.
Absolutely. I think it's important to try and apply this to our everyday life as well. You know, we don't yet have the influence over the FA, Ed.
No.
Not just
Maybe
yet.
we should.
Maybe one day. But maybe we can have a look at where we are in our churches or our communities. Maybe there's someone really struggling with an illness, an injury, something that they are really struggling with. Yes, it's good to say, look, I'm praying for you. Get well soon. Here's a card. Here's some flowers. What can you practically do? How can you help that person in need in your community? Maybe that's someone that is maybe getting a bit older, struggles to get out a bit more. Can you do their shopping for them? Can you make some meals for them? What's that practical thing that you can do to help someone out?
If you look at somebody who, might be struggling with even sort of spiritual stuff, they might be struggling with addiction, they might be struggling with sin or whatever it might be, and actually going and saying nice things to them, or even praying for them, as lovely as that is and as important as that is, actually what they might really need is you to stand with them and to walk with them on that journey. And I think, like, whether it's head injuries or whether it's something more practical in our daily life, I think we just need to be making sure that we as Christians are caring for those around us in a really practical, tangible way. Okay, Joe, it's time for Bible Ballers again.
Oh dear, I'm struggling this weekend.
Struggling with this one. Well, never mind, because you know you're always better than me anyway.
Well,
so.
I'm still holding on to last week, so the pressure is off.
Yeah, fair enough. So I'll read the question out again. Which one club man was once described as a bottler by TalkSport's Adrian Durham during a live phone-in, prompting him to pick up the phone, call the show, and defend himself live on air? How are you doing with this one?
I can't get Mark Noble out of my head.
I do have a clue.
Which is often the problem in life.
I do have a clue if you want it.
Yeah, go on, let's have a clue.
So your clue is, this player won the Champions League.
So it's not Mark Noble?
It's not Mark Noble.
Ooh. Now, I'm wondering if you've gone James Carragher. One club man has won the Champions League. You look disappointed.
I looked at...
Yeah.
What, like you've got it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you can read my face like a book, Joe. It's Jamie Carragher. Well done.
Yes, I don't remember this story.
Oh, I do. It was to do with his England career because he'd retired from international football. And basically Adrian Durham was going on one of his famous rants and he was calling him a bottler. And then, yeah, sure enough, there was a phone call into the show later on. It was Jamie himself. You've never heard their tail go between their legs so audibly on a radio phone-in show than Adrian Durham's quick U-turn on his opinions of Jamie Carragher. It was fantastic. It was football media gold.
Well, he is a James... I've just had a search. James Lee Duncan Carragher. Yeah. Did you know that he's English Maltese?
I did not know that.
Well, there you go.
Well, there you go. So, yes, Jamie Carragher, well done. It's another point for you, Joe.
Thanks very much, Ed. I'm very sorry.
You're on fire.
Well, thank you for listening to The Big Man Up Top. If you want to get in touch with the show, ping us an email to podcasts@ucb.co.uk. Please follow us, subscribe, and give us good reviews because this will help us get the word out. And also, if you've enjoyed this, please tell your mates. Also, a huge thank you to our producer, Anthony, for all his hard work behind the scenes. And I'll see you next Tuesday for another episode, Ed.
Yes, we've got to go and watch England beat Latvia 1-0 in an underwhelming fashion now, haven't we?
Yes, penalty Harry Kane, 54th minute.
Sounds about right.
See you then.
See you next week, Joe.